I don't care what sob story you have, the bank manager said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. No legitimate teenager has this kind of cash. This is stolen money, fraud money, or both. Jennifer Peterson, a blonde woman whose 45 years had etched lines of permanent suspicion around her eyes, jabbed an aggressive finger toward Michelle Williams. The 16-year-old black girl sat with an almost unnatural calm, a silent island in the sea of chaos erupting around her. The entire bank had ground to a halt. Customers stood frozen mid-transaction, tellers' hands hovered over their keyboards, and every eye was fixed on the explosive confrontation. But Michelle remained serene. She rose to her feet, her movements deliberate and controlled. In a voice that sliced cleanly through the noise, she said, "Mrs. Peterson, you need to stop talking right now." One might have expected that to give the manager pause. It did not. Instead, Jennifer detonated. "You think I'm stupid?" she shrieked, her face flushing a deep, furious red. "I've seen every scam in the book. I'm calling the FBI." She spun to face her staff, who nodded in dutiful agreement. No legitimate teenager walks around with $15,000. Customers began pulling out their phones, the small red lights of recording winking into existence. Jennifer, riding a wave of self-righteous triumph, was convinced she was the hero of the hour, the one who had saved First National Bank from a teenage criminal mastermind. Then, as if summoned by her very words, two FBI agents in crisp, dark suits walked through the glass doors. Jennifer's eyes lit up with vindication. She strode toward them confidently, pointing back at the young girl. "Officers," she announced, "I caught her red-handed." Agent Rodriguez, a tall man with a commanding presence, took one look at Michelle Williams, and then something impossible happened. The entire bank fell into a silence so profound you could have heard a pin drop. Every ounce of color drained from Jennifer Peterson's face as she stared, her mouth agape in utter shock. To understand how a routine bank deposit spiraled into this moment of breathtaking tension, we must rewind to earlier that morning, to a small coffee shop called B Cafe. It was there, amidst the morning rush, that the first seeds of prejudice were sown. Michelle had walked into the cafe with a military-precise posture that set her apart from the slouching teenagers around her. She ordered a black coffee with an extra shot, the serious choice of someone with real responsibilities, not the sugary concoction of a typical 16-year-old. Behind her in line, two middle-aged women, Linda and Carol, were gossiping loudly. "These kids today," Linda complained, "think money grows on trees." "Parents just hand them credit cards," Carol agreed. "No work ethic whatsoever." When Michelle reached the counter to pay for her $4.50 coffee, she pulled out a $100 bill. The reaction was immediate. Linda's voice dropped to what she likely thought was a whisper. "Look at that. Where's a black kid getting money like that?" Carol didn't hesitate. "Probably dealing drugs." The young barista, Jake, flushed with embarrassment as he made change, glancing sympathetically at Michelle, but she handled the moment with a grace far beyond her years. She calmly placed a business card on the counter. "Williams Academic Tutoring," she said, her voice even. "If your kids need help with calculus or SAT prep." Then she tipped Jake $5, wished him a good day, and walked out with her head held high, leaving Linda and Carol to exchange uncomfortable glances. The theme of her day was set. A young black woman with money was automatically a person of interest. The truth was far more impressive. At just 16, Michelle was the daughter of Army Colonel Maria Williams, who was 8 months into an overseas deployment. While her peers worried about social media, Michelle was independently running the tutoring business she had built from the ground up. She possessed a fascinating mix of quiet confidence and military bearing inherited from her mother, a maturity forged by a life that had forced her to grow up fast. The $15,000 she planned to deposit was entirely legitimate. Part of it was from her thriving business. The rest was money her mother had been saving during her deployment, which Michelle was responsible for managing. For her, this bank trip was routine, another task in the carefully structured life of a military daughter. She had no idea she was walking into a fortress of judgment, presided over by people who would make the women at the coffee shop seem open-minded. Jennifer Peterson saw threats everywhere. Patricia, the 55-year-old head teller, was a rigid traditionalist who followed Jennifer's lead without question. And Robert, an ambitious loan officer, was a sycophant who would agree with his boss even if his conscience screamed otherwise. They were primed to see a young black woman with a large sum of cash as a problem to be solved, and they were about to make the biggest mistake of their professional lives. When Michelle entered First National Bank, she carried herself with the poise of someone who belonged. Her documents were organized in a neat folder. The security guard, Marcus, a Vietnam veteran, recognized her military bearing and gave her a respectful nod. But when the young teller, Amy, processed the transaction, the large amount triggered a mandatory manager approval. Her hands were shaking as she called for Jennifer Peterson. Jennifer swooped in like a hawk. "What's going on here?" she demanded. Despite Amy's explanation of a routine protocol, Jennifer's eyes landed on Michelle, and her mind filled in a different story. "Where did you get this money?" she snapped. "This looks like stolen money to me," she declared before Michelle could fully answer. Michelle calmly explained her business and her mother's deployment savings, offering references and documentation. Jennifer scoffed. "Tutoring? You expect me to believe that?" A mob mentality began to form. Patricia, the head teller, nodded sagely. "Mrs. Peterson's just being thorough." Robert, the loan officer, chimed in. "Exactly the kind of suspicious activity we're trained to catch." Even other customers began to murmur their agreement. Only Sarah Chen, the assistant manager, hesitated, wanting to check the account history, but Jennifer waved her off, her paranoia escalating. "I think we're dealing with fraud," she announced, before escorting Michelle to a glass office for further investigation. The accusations intensified. "In my 20 years," Patricia announced, "legitimate money doesn't look like this." Robert added, "The attitude, the cash, the elaborate story, classic fraud patterns." Through it all, Michelle remained a pillar of dignity. While Jennifer was calling the police, her voice ringing with self-importance, Michelle quietly sent a text message to an unknown contact. No one noticed. They were too busy congratulating their manager. "This is stolen money, fraud money, or both," Jennifer proclaimed to the entire bank. That's when Michelle issued her sharp warning. "Mrs. Peterson, you need to be very careful what you're saying." Jennifer exploded. "Don't you dare threaten me!" Just then, as if to underscore the grotesque bias of the situation, a 17-year-old white boy named Tyler walked up to a teller. He wore ripped jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, and he deposited nearly $14,000 in cash. No one batted an eye. No manager was called. No questions were asked. He was in and out in under 3 minutes. Marcus, the security guard, saw it, and his jaw tightened. Sarah Chen saw it, and something clicked in her mind about how deeply wrong this had become. But Jennifer Peterson was too busy preparing for the arrival of the FBI to notice she had just exposed her own prejudice for all to see. When the FBI dispatch was confirmed, a cheer went through the staff. "Mrs. Peterson just saved the bank," Patricia declared. Jennifer, drunk on power, walked back to Michelle with a smirk. "Hope you enjoyed your little scheme." "Mrs. Peterson," Michelle said, her voice low and serious, "you should stop talking immediately." And then, the FBI agents walked in. Jennifer launched into her triumphant tale of stopping a major fraud scheme. But Agent Rodriguez had stopped listening. His eyes were fixed on Michelle. "Teenager with $15,000 in cash," Jennifer pressed, jabbing her finger again. "Obvious stolen money. Arrest her." Michelle finally spoke to the agents, her quiet voice cutting through the noise. "Agent Rodriguez," she said, "I believe you know my mother." The agent's professional mask dropped, replaced by stunned respect. "Ma'am," he asked, "are you Colonel Williams's daughter?" "Don't fall for her lies," Jennifer shrieked, frantic. But it was too late. Agent Rodriguez snapped to attention and delivered a sharp, precise military salute. His partner immediately followed suit. Both agents saluted the 16-year-old girl with a reverence reserved for the highest echelons of command. The bank went utterly, completely silent. "What? Why are you saluting her?" Jennifer stammered. Patricia's face was ashen. Robert stepped backward in horror. An elderly customer who had cheered Jennifer on sank into a chair, whispering, "What have we done?" In that moment, Michelle was transformed. The quiet composure everyone had mistaken for guilt was revealed for what it truly was. The unshakable confidence of someone who knew the truth was on her side. Jennifer Peterson's world was crumbling around her, her ugly assumptions and racial bias laid bare for all to see. The girl she had branded a criminal was about to show her just how catastrophically wrong she was. The power in the room had shifted, irrevocably. Jennifer Peterson was about to learn that the person you underestimate is often the one who holds the power to change your life forever. The silence in the bank was a crushing weight. Jennifer Peterson watched her world collapse in slow motion, and she had not yet heard the worst of it. It was then that Agent Rodriguez began to speak. "Colonel Maria Williams," he said, his voice resonating with a reverence reserved for true heroes. A Bronze Star recipient for courage under fire in Afghanistan, a Purple Heart for wounds sustained in combat while saving 3 of her soldiers. She is currently serving overseas on a joint military FBI task force that has saved this country millions by preempting financial crimes. Jennifer's face drained of all color, shifting from pale to a ghostly white. One could see the gears in her mind grinding, trying to reconcile this decorated soldier with the narrative she had constructed of a teenage delinquent. But Agent Rodriguez was far from finished. He turned to Michelle, his expression one of open admiration. "And this remarkable young lady," he continued, "personally assists our financial crimes unit through a special program for military families. She has helped us identify patterns that have led to major arrests. Her analytical skills are so sharp that our team specifically requests her input on our most complex cases." The words struck the room with the force of a physical blow. Patricia, the head teller, gasped audibly. Robert, the loan officer, took several involuntary steps back as if he'd been struck. Jennifer's legs seemed ready to buckle. "No, this can't be happening," she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. Then, Agent Foster delivered the final, career-ending strike. "The Williams family are major shareholders in this bank. They have been loyal customers and pillars of this community for over a decade. Colonel Williams has personally recommended this institution to dozens of military families because of the trust she thought they showed to service members." The word "thought" hung in the air, a blade poised to fall. In that moment, something cinematic unfolded. A large screen near the customer service desk flickered to life. On it appeared Colonel Maria Williams, live from a military base thousands of miles away. The video was crystal clear. She was in full uniform, her medals and commendations gleaming on her chest. Behind her, other military personnel paused their duties, their attention drawn to the unfolding drama. When Colonel Williams saw her daughter in that glass office, when the reality of the past hour settled upon her, her expression was a storm of immense pride and barely contained fury. Her jaw tightened as she took in the scene, her 16-year-old daughter surrounded by people who had treated her like a criminal. Behind the colonel, a crowd of officers and enlisted personnel gathered, their faces mirroring her own mixture of anger and respect for the young woman on the screen. Agent Foster stepped forward, her voice imbued with profound respect. "Ma'am, we are deeply sorry for what your daughter has experienced. This is not how military families should be treated in this country." The horrified realization that washed over the staff was painful to witness. Patricia, who had so eagerly supported the interrogation, covered her face in shame, her shoulders shaking. Robert, the ambitious loan officer, shrank away from the group, his face a mask of terror as his own career flashed before his eyes. The customers who had been so vocal in their support scrambled just as desperately. Tom Wilson's fingers flew across his phone screen, frantically deleting the social media posts where he had praised the manager's diligence. Mrs. Henderson looked as if she wished the floor would swallow her whole. Through it all, Michelle Williams maintained the calm authority she had displayed from the beginning. Vindicated, with FBI agents apologizing and her mother watching from across the world, she did not gloat. She did not raise her voice. Looking directly at Agent Rodriguez with a maturity beyond her years, she stated, "I trust this incident will be documented appropriately and that steps will be taken to ensure no other military family faces this kind of treatment." Then came the moment Jennifer Peterson had been dreading. Michelle reached into her backpack and retrieved a business card. It was not the simple tutoring card she had tried to show Jennifer earlier. This was different, an elegant, heavy card with an official letterhead that drew audible gasps from those who saw it. "Mrs. Peterson," Michelle said, her voice now carrying an authority that filled the entire bank, "you are hereby terminated from your position, effective immediately." Jennifer's denial was panicked and desperate. "You can't fire me. You're just a teenager. I was protecting the bank." But Michelle's authority was absolute. She stood to her full height, her gaze unwavering. "I am exercising my family's shareholder rights. Your employment is terminated for discrimination, harassment, and violation of banking protocols. Agent Rodriguez added another layer to Jennifer's ruin. Ma'am, there may also be federal civil rights violations to address. This incident will be part of an official FBI investigation. Your treatment of a decorated veteran's daughter could result in federal charges. Jennifer's breakdown was total. It was the complete obliteration of her professional identity. The career she had built over 20 years, every relationship, every opportunity, all of it vanished, consumed by the prejudice she had allowed to blind her. As Jennifer crumbled, the staff scrambled. Patricia and Robert whispered frantically, plotting how to save themselves. But then, a moment of integrity pierced the ugly scene. Sarah Chen, the assistant manager who had tried to intervene, stepped forward. Though her hands trembled, her voice was clear. I tried repeatedly to tell Mrs. Peterson to check the Williams family account. They are VIP customers. I witnessed everything, and I can confirm she ignored proper protocols and acted with unacceptable discrimination. Next came Marcus, the security guard. I have everything on the security cameras, he stated, his voice steady. Every word, every accusation. In 40 years, I've never seen anything like it. Even Amy, the young, intimidated teller, found her courage. I recorded some of it on my phone, she admitted softly. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't do more. Jennifer Peterson's exit was a spectacle of humiliation. Escorted out by security, she was a pariah, her face illuminated by the glow of a dozen phone screens recording her downfall. Her career was over. Her reputation was in ruins. But the story was not yet complete. As this drama played out, another truth was coming to light, one that would put the final nail in the coffin of Jennifer's assumptions. Tyler, the 17-year-old who had breezed in earlier and deposited $14,000 without a single question, had been trying to slip out a side exit. He had processed his transaction in under 3 minutes while Michelle was being interrogated. Agent Foster spotted him. Excuse me, young man, could you wait a moment, please? When Tyler turned, both agents recognized him instantly. They had been studying security footage from a major electronics store robbery for 3 days. Tyler's face was burned into their memory. Agent Rodriguez quietly showed his phone to his partner. It was a still from the store's camera. Agent Foster nodded grimly. Tyler was arrested on the spot for theft, burglary, and money laundering. The irony was devastating. Jennifer Peterson had spent hours humiliating a decorated veteran's daughter, a legitimate businesswoman, while the actual criminal had conducted his business without a second glance. The visual was unforgettable. Tyler being led away in handcuffs while Michelle stood tall, receiving apologies from federal agents. Customers turned their cameras from Jennifer to Tyler, their shocked murmurs filling the air. Oh my God, he was the criminal. We were all watching the wrong person. On the screen, Colonel Williams looked at her daughter with overwhelming pride. Her voice carried across the bank. Michelle, you handled yourself with a grace that makes me proud to be your mother. You represented our family and our values perfectly. The soldiers behind her nodded, and several of them rendered a crisp salute to the young woman on the screen. Within 30 minutes, 3 black sedans arrived, disgorging the bank's top executives. They had been alerted by the security company and walked into a public relations inferno. The regional president approached the monitor. Colonel Williams, he began, his voice heavy with contrition. On behalf of this institution, I offer our most profound apologies. What happened here is unacceptable. But the damage was already done and spreading like wildfire online. Hashtags like #MichelleWilliams and #militaryfamily were trending nationwide. The videos had millions of views. News crews were arriving. More powerfully, military families from the local base began to gather outside, not in anger, but in quiet solidarity. Veterans in uniform stood holding signs, "We stand with Michelle." The executives acted swiftly. Sarah Chen was immediately promoted to bank manager, with a significant raise and a public commendation. Marcus was made head of security. Amy was enrolled in the management training program. Jennifer Peterson never worked in banking again. Her name became a cautionary tale of prejudice and poor judgment. Michelle Williams, however, transformed her ordeal into a force for good. She established a financial literacy program for military families that became a model for banks across the nation. When a reporter later asked how she felt about Jennifer's fate, Michelle's response was a testament to her character. "I hope this is a learning moment," she said, looking into the camera. "Prejudice hurts everyone. Mrs. Peterson lost her career because she couldn't see past her own assumptions. I hope others learn from her mistake and choose to treat everyone with dignity." It was a level of wisdom and grace that was, in a word, remarkable. Sarah's tenure as manager began with an act of profound humility. Her first move was to personally apologize to Michelle, assuring her that the bank would spare no effort to regain her family's trust. Her second was to immediately begin forging new policies to ensure such discrimination could never happen again. These changes were comprehensive and far-reaching. She instituted mandatory, intensive bias training for all employees, not a token online course, but ongoing education in cultural sensitivity. A new, anonymous reporting system was established, empowering employees to voice concerns without fear of retaliation. Regular audits of customer interactions would become routine, searching for patterns of discriminatory behavior. And crucially, a new protocol demanded that managers consult a customer's account history before ever leveling an accusation or taking extraordinary action. But these weren't just local changes. The bank's corporate executives, desperate to control the narrative, announced that these new policies would be implemented nationwide. Michelle's ordeal had become the catalyst for a complete overhaul of their approach to customer service. The ripples of change continued. Marcus, the security guard whose quiet documentation had been instrumental, was not merely commended. He was promoted to head of security for the entire region. In his 40 years of dedication and his unwavering moral compass, the executives saw the very essence of true leadership. Amy, the young teller who had overcome her fear of Jennifer to record the evidence, was fast-tracked into the bank's management training program with a full scholarship, a clear message that moral courage would be rewarded. But it was what Michelle Williams did next that demonstrated a grace that silenced her critics and astonished her allies. Sidestepping the path of revenge or a massive financial settlement, she announced her intention to transform this painful ordeal into a force for good. She proposed the creation of a comprehensive financial literacy program designed specifically for military families, a curriculum that would teach not only financial planning and investment, but also train bank employees on the unique challenges military families face: deployments, frequent moves, and the complexities of managing finances while serving overseas. The bank executives, still in damage control mode, instantly agreed to fund it. But Michelle's vision extended beyond a single institution. She envisioned a national model that could help thousands of military families while educating the entire financial industry. The program became the Williams Military Financial Literacy Initiative, and within 6 months it was being adopted by banks across the country. For her work, Michelle became the youngest person ever to receive a national award for community service from a major veterans organization. Meanwhile, Jennifer Peterson's downfall was swift, public, and absolute. As the executives announced promotions and new policies founded on integrity, Jennifer was being escorted from the building by security, under the unblinking eyes of customers and their smartphone cameras. Her career was obliterated, her reputation ruined. She attempted to defend herself in local news interviews, claiming she was simply following protocol, but her words rang hollow. When reporters pressed her on why Tyler had been served without question while Michelle was interrogated, she had no answer that could stand against the simple, damning truth. Her name became synonymous with workplace discrimination, a case study in business schools on how prejudice leads to catastrophic failure. She eventually moved away, taking a job far from public life, but even years later, her name would forever be tied to the videos of her downfall. But the true measure of Michelle Williams wasn't found in boardrooms or news headlines. It was found 3 months later, at a kitchen table in a modest apartment. There she was, helping a 12-year-old boy named David with his algebra homework. David's parents worked multiple jobs, unable to afford a tutor, so Michelle helped him for free through a program she had started. "I don't get why X is 5, David said, his voice laced with frustration. Michelle just smiled, patiently breaking down the problem again until his face lit up with understanding. "Oh, I get it now. You're the best tutor ever." She laughed and gave him a high five. "You did the work, David. I just showed you the path." This was the real Michelle Williams, not a viral sensation or the girl who fired a bank manager, but a teenager with a gift for math and a passion for helping others. She was a young woman who handled immense responsibility with grace and chose to use even her worst experiences to make the world better. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mother, still serving overseas. "Proud of you every day, sweetheart. Can't wait to come home." Michelle smiled and texted back, "Love you too, Mom. David just solved his first quadratic equation." Miles away, Colonel Williams read the message and knew her daughter was going to be more than just fine. The story of Michelle Williams and Jennifer Peterson rippled out far beyond a single news cycle. It became a cultural touchstone, a teaching moment that forced thousands to confront their own biases. Schools used the footage to teach dignity, companies used it for diversity training, and parents showed it to their children as a lesson in handling injustice with strength. The message was powerful. Never underestimate anyone. For the quiet teenager in line ahead of you may be a CEO in the making. The young person making a deposit might be the child of heroes, and the person you are most tempted to dismiss might possess a wisdom forged in trials you can barely imagine. Michelle Williams proved that character and intelligence have no age, and that how we carry ourselves through challenge is what truly defines us. Her story is a reminder that in a world of snap judgments, the choice to treat every person with dignity isn't just right, it's wise. You never know who you are standing in front of. If this incredible story has inspired you to think differently, please consider subscribing. Stories like Michelle's deserve to be shared, as they remind us of the extraordinary things ordinary people can achieve when given the respect they deserve.